Meeting to order at 5:35 p.m. My apologies to all for being late, but we had a rather thorough interview with the SED. I thought it was quite successful. I appreciate everybody's input. And with that, we have the proof of public notice before you, which was timely submitted, and the agenda, which was also submitted to you. Does anybody have any questions about the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
No motion.
So move. I'll
Becky.
second.
Who got the second?
Judy.
Judy, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Our first report is from Jill. Ms. Noel.
Do you want to go over the minutes, Jim?
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
It's okay.
Moving fast. All right. Yes, of course, we have to approve the minutes. I think they look just lovely. Anybody have any questions, comments, typos? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our board meeting of November 17th.
So move.
Mary, second.
I second.
Lauren, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. The minutes are approved. Now we move on to Ms. Geiger.
Okay. So I'm here to announce this month's Pride Spotlight. This month, our habit of scholarship was integrity. I am honest with myself and others. So the awards this month for integrity go to Ella Kent from Crew 101, Olivia Kwanzaa from Crew 102, Aiden Deere from Crew 103,
Frankie, stop.
Hermione Graham, Crew 104,
Now you hate.
Sebastian McCreary
Stop.
from Crew 105, Santino Groom from Crew 106, Dariana Tanksley from Crew 107, Andre Campbell from Crew 108, Stefan Long from Crew 114, Desire Panessa from Crew 115, Jadrian Claudio Fernandez from Crew 116, Michael Gray from Crew 117, Anaja Smith from Crew 118, Lamaya Felix from Crew 119. Nominated by Mrs. Casper is Xander Koziel. Nominated by Mrs. Ford, Aiden Hausman. For music, Jacob McCreary. Art is Lamira Gibson. And for physical education, we have El Nathan Omafa. Congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations.
I will be sending all of the Pride Spotlight certificates in the mail this week for the students. Okay, and then for Employee of the Month, we have a nomination from Mrs. Boniface and Miss Smith from second grade. And they wrote, "We would like to proudly nominate Mrs. Tracy for Employee of the Month. She has been a tremendous help to not only the second grade team, but all grade levels as we transition to this new live virtual instruction. She is always there to offer her support and assistance, whether it be by phone, in person, or email. She wears multiple hats during the day and is our go-to person for almost any question we have. We appreciate everything that Mrs. Tracy has done to support all of us, which has made this transition smooth for our students. We can't thank you enough, Mrs. Tracy. We appreciate you." And again, that was from Mrs. Boniface and Miss Smith. Congratulations, Mrs. Tracy.
Congratulations, Mrs. Tracy. Wonderful job.
And I'm going to turn it over to Darcy.
To Dr. Novak, we
No.
would like, whoever knows or doesn't know, but Darcy has her well-earned recognition as a doctor having successfully presented her dissertation.
And I'll give you a little overview of that in a little bit, but thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone. To start off my CAO report for this month, I'd like to start, as I traditionally do, with an update on professional development. So let me just switch my screens really fast. Okay, so to update professional development, not as long as last month, as I feel like, well, our board meeting did come a little sooner with the modification to the date. So to begin, Caitlin Smith, fifth grade teacher, she attended Lucy Calkins. This was for office hours around our units of study for phonics and writing. All of our classroom teachers had grade level meetings with Brian Blazak for Google Classrooms and CAMI training. And CAMI is a tool and resource for teachers to manipulate and PDF documents and to write and highlight things for students on those type of forms. Mrs. Chekla from fifth grade is participating in strategies for ELL students. This is a self-professional development, and it's offered through the Bureau of Education and Research, also known as BEAR. Coach Abrams attended the PE Teacher Consortium, also through the Bureau of Education and Research. Christy Santo, Dean of Students, attended the K-12 School Infrastructure Security Best Practices. This was provided through Homeland Security. Julie LaRosso from Erie One BOCES was here at NCS, of course, pre-remote learning for one day. She worked with grade level teachers on our writing and our phonics curriculum, and Julie conducted observations and gave feedback to our staff on this curriculum. Cole Kerner from Erie One BOCES was also here for one day. She conducted observations and gave feedback to teachers, and her area of focus is behavior management. She's a behavior specialist that we work with through Erie One BOCES. Teachers in grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 met with Elizabeth Kramer, also from Erie One BOCES. This was for math meetings and looking at virtual tools for math instruction in remote learning. And lastly, Cindy Rice, our school designer from EL Education. There's a little bit of a typo here. She was here for one day on campus. And Cindy and EL is supporting Niagara Charter School in our work on equity and inclusion and looking at access for students and making sure that we are addressing equity and inclusion in all of our classrooms, our curriculum, and the resources that students are engaging with. Okay. That was the general update in terms of professional development. I did want to give an update in terms of our instructional program, where we're at right now. We are still on a remote learning basis. We went all remote effective November 30th. That decision allowed us, we gave parents, it was about a 10 days notice that we were going to be transitioning after the Thanksgiving break into this modality. For those of you who don't know, and I can't remember if I reported on this last time or not, but the yellow zone, while technically our building is not physically located in the, excuse me, the yellow zone of Niagara County, we are right next door to it. It's Walmore Road, which is right next door to our school. So we're in very close proximity to the yellow zone. We have students who live in the yellow zone who would be traveling and, coming into Niagara Charter School. And as I'm sure most trustees and families have been keeping abreast in the news, the numbers in the county continue to rise. I don't think there's been any changes in terms of color designations, but we are obviously still concerned about the high level of positivity rate in this area. So we have continued with remote instruction. Today is day number 7. And minus a couple of computer glitches and breakout room faux pas, trying to get kids assigned to certain rooms and things like that, our attendance has looked really, really good. Most of the classrooms we visited with SED the last 2 days, as well as Jill and myself conducted informal observations last week, had anywhere from 18 to 22 students present and online at that given time. So we're very pleased right now with the level of attendance, and we're working on engagement strategies for participation, but so far we're off to a really good start. So some new guidance was released in terms of, I feel like the Department of Health and SED are putting out a new update every other day. So this one was released on December 4th. The guidance document was specific in regards to areas designated as red and orange. And like I said, we're technically not yellow yet, but in the guidance document, what was of interest for us in our current situation right now, it talks about testing options for students. So I think, let me remind everyone on the call right now that if and when we're designated a yellow zone, the requirement right now is that you would COVID-19 test 20% of your staff and students. And so then if that 20% result rate is lower than the positivity rate of your county, then you don't have to test again, as long as you're in that same color designation. So what that means for us with that was the question of how do you conduct this testing first and foremost on site, partnerships with local labs and vendors, et cetera, et cetera. So this last document that came out on the 4th, it does clarify the testing options. So schools can accept written test results from family healthcare providers. So families can take children to their healthcare provider of choice for testing. Schools can have students, faculty, and staff go to a test site run by New York State to have their specimens collected for testing. We talked about this before. We can establish partnerships with other entities who are authorized to perform testing. We could apply for an LSL, limited service lab registration, which is when we talked about needing a MD, a medical doctor, to co-sign that application process with us. And then it talks about schools can utilize pooled testing. And there's some information about that would not apply. So what we're going to do, and Mrs. Gonzalez was actually working on this remotely today. Next week, we are going to send out a Google form to our families and then another form to our staff. We need to assess and see if we can achieve a 20% agreeable rate of families that would be agreeable and consenting to taking their child to be tested. As of right now, we still do not have a plan in place to test on site here at school. So families, if they are agreeable, would have to basically provide us with documentation. Typically when you go for a COVID-19 test, there's some type of receipt or some type of card, something they give you. The child or the staff member does not need to stay out of school, is my understanding, as they wait for their test result. You continue in school, you continue to work until that test result is received. So the first thing we have to do is determine if we have a 20% of our population agreeable to testing. If we do not have 20%, then this is a moot point and we would not be able to open anyways as a yellow zone designation. So next week we wanted to, let me stop and go back. We did not want to overwhelm families. This was the, week 2, the start of week 2 for synchronous live lessons. Families have a lot on their plate. They're learning the live schedule, the live learning, the Google Classrooms, and the live sends, Google Meets rather. So we thought it would be more appropriate to give a couple days time. So next week, those surveys will go out and we'll see what numbers we get back for a response. And then we'll make decisions based on those numbers.
Hey, Darcy, with the state of where we are right now, would you consider doing 30% based on like if we go into a red zone, or are you going to wait until that happens?
I guess I have to wait, and I'd be interested just to see what the first draw of survey or Google Forms back from teachers and students would even indicate, where we would be with that.
If I might, if you don't have significantly more than 20% who agree, I wouldn't even, if you get, 21%, that's probably a little too. So anyway, yeah, we probably need 30% to get 20%.
Yes. Sorry, Amy, if that's, yes, exactly. Because, as a parent, if you're agreeing and you would do this and you only have this 20% and then say we have to test the very next week because our average was over the county positivity rate, unfortunately, you'd be looking at testing the same group of students, which they really don't want to replicate. So yes, we would have to, yes, Amy, that would be a good point. And Jim, 30% at least, hopefully maybe more. Testing appointments and that, myself, I went to have a test done so that the office staff here, there's 9 of us every day, 20% of 9, 2 of us went. and it wasn't the easiest thing to get an appointment. I don't know if things are changing. That was 2 weeks ago now, but it was difficult. I was able to get an appointment finally at Niagara County Community College out that way. But in terms of trying to do the drive-through or the self-administered test they have now at Rite Aids and CVS and some Walgreens, I wasn't able to get an appointment. So I think right now our safest bet is to continue remote until we have all of these wrinkles ironed out and we have a really sound plan for families. What we are trying to avoid is opening school back up and then having to close without any notice for families. I know that some families, obviously this isn't the best situation for everyone, and I know that some were very concerned technically in the yellow zone, but we're so close and the numbers continue to rise. It sat better with myself and the leadership team to make a decision to give families 10 days notice to close the building and to prepare for remote learning versus some local schools where we actually reside gave parents notice Sunday after Thanksgiving via text message that their schools, for an abundance of caution, were not opening effective that Monday morning. So families had less than 24 hours notice to make arrangements. So we are really trying to avoid those scenarios as much as we can. If there's no other questions about professional development or our update in terms of their instructional model or COVID testing, my last general comment has to do with day 2 is concluded of our site renewal visit. The board, as you mentioned, was just in a session with Susan Gibbons from the charter school office and a consultant as well. I feel very positive in terms of our 2 days with this team. Our closing meeting, Sue told us they're really not allowed to, nor can they give us specifics or real solid indicators as to what the recommendations will be right now. They have to consult with each other and generate their report. There's a process, but I think I can quote Sue. I wrote it down as saying she didn't see any red flags. So we'll take that as a positive note. And Jill and myself, we were very, very impressed with the teachers and the students in terms of their participation in online learning, keeping in mind yesterday being just day 6 and then today day 7. So it was a job really well done. I'm very proud. And I think we had a very successful renewal visit, especially in this new virtual modality.
I can tell you, Darcy, that Susan and Lauren were very impressed with you and your team.
Thank you. So move over to that concludes my general updates. But I would like to move on to the dashboard review, which every trustee should have a copy of the dashboard in their board packet. If there are any questions, I will certainly do my best to answer those now. I do want to point out that we're very optimistic and very hopeful that our December average daily attendance rate will be higher than the 69% we've reported for the last 2 months. As I said, we've seen very impressive attendance numbers thus far with the synchronous live lessons taking place. So we're very optimistic that we're going to see an increase in the attendance.
Any questions? Carry on.
Okay. Next on your agenda, you'll see something new and something that we wanted to add to our monthly agenda if agreeable with each of the trustees. And actually, it's something the leadership team has spoken about in the past weeks, past month, and Mrs. Casper brought it up again recently. So at this time, I would like to honor what we're calling our Parent of the Month. And then moving forward, into the next few months, I will send an email to my staff and I will ask for any nominations of parents and families who basically the parents would recommend in terms, there's not a set criteria list, but even if there's a family that like overcame a challenge with technology recently or a family that's really just, gave the extra effort to support the teacher and the student and their child in the classroom. We feel that during COVID, it's the relationship between the school and the families have really strengthened. And even though we're in a negative situation, one of the positives is the increase in parent parent and teacher and staff communication with the families. We're communicating, whether it's via text, email, or talking, or Google Meets, so much more. And this is not easy for our parents, just like it's not easy for our kids and it's not easy for our teachers. So we thought it was appropriate to start recognizing a parent or a family at each meeting. So with that, I'm going to read this month. For the Parent of the Month, the nomination came over from Mrs. Casper. And she says, I would like to recognize a parent who has really been a terrific help to me, her children, and Niagara Charter School during this difficult time. This parent has reached out when help was needed. This parent has stepped up when asked for help. This parent has an endless supply of energy and kindness, and that should be recognized. I would like to thank Mrs. Christine Smith-Koziel for all of your many years of friendship, kindness, and humor and support of the Niagara Charter School. So thank you very much, Mrs. Smith-Koziel. We greatly appreciate you and your support all of these years here at Niagara.
Thanks.
And thank you for all your work on the board.
Absolutely. Okay, and I know we're running a little late. So Jill, can I become host to share my screen so I can quickly? I am the host. Okay, so I will try to do this. And I won't labor this any longer, but so as Jim mentioned on, I think it was the 23rd, November 23rd, I did defend my dissertation successfully to my committee at Niagara University. I'm very happy, very proud about that. It was a grueling, about 2.5 hour process. I did have a committee member on my board, on my committee who is not pro-charter. And so it got to a point where I had to really choose the battle as to what I was defending in terms of my actual research versus his perception or opinion of charter schools. And just to give you a small slice of that, my literature review, which itself is about 57 pages, part of that talks about accountability in charter schools and the high level of accountability. And in my appendices, I actually provide a copy of the New York State Charter School Office Performance Framework, because these are our accountability measures, as we know. And this is not my opinion, although I try to bracket myself as the researcher out of this. I had multiple hundreds of references and citations attesting to this high level of accountability and all the different ways that can affect the teachers at charter schools, the leaders at charter schools, the board of trustees at charter schools. And he just doesn't agree that there's a different set of accountability measures for charter schools versus traditional public schools. So I decided not to debate that with him at length. And at the end of the day, I still walked away with the 3 letters after my name, because you're not, when he was comparing us to Rochester public schools and the work that they're doing, it was just, anyways, I wanted to thank the trustees, my point being to thank the trustees for supporting me, for amending my agreement with the school to provide me some time off to pursue my research, pursue my studies. And what I wanted to do was just give you a quick overview of what I looked at and what I researched and what my findings were. So let's see, I haven't shared a screen in a little while. Let's do this. Okay. Go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so the title of my dissertation is The Practices of Exemplary Leadership. It's a collective case study of charter school leadership. You don't have to read all of this, I will summarize. So basically what I discovered through my PhD program over 3 years of studying and doing literature reviews about charter school leadership is that there's a real big gap in research. Charter schools came to New York State in 1998. And so you see a lot of research that's relevant to say like 99, 2001, 2002. When you're conducting research, and especially with a dissertation, they really don't want to see you use resources and references that are anywhere over 10 years of age. So that was a real challenge because a lot of the research about charter schools, whether it was about accountability or leadership or lotteries or enrollment or what have you, it really was, a lot of that took place a while ago. So you see a big gap in the research. And so obviously I'm interested in leadership. Obviously I have a passion for charter schools and being an advocate for the charter school movement as a reform policy. So that's how I decided on my research. And for conducting my dissertation, they teach you about forming or looking at what is your conceptual framework. So how am I framing my interest in charter schools and leadership? I did that by looking at the work of Kouzes and Posner. And they're two researchers who have conducted about 30 years of research around leadership, not just in schools, but leadership in lots of different careers and organizations and facets. And they have these 5 practices that relate to transformational leadership, which is a theory developed in the late 70s, early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And anyways, my assumptions going into this were I want to interview school leaders who are exemplary with their academic outcomes, and see how often these practices are taking place, or if these practices are taking place, or if a bunch of different other practices are taking place, so that these things can be replicated so other charter schools can replicate them and hopefully be successful. And if they're in a charter school in a negative trajectory right now, maybe they can help to turn it around. If it's a new charter school with a new leader, maybe this could be a resource for them. So I ended up interviewing because I worked with David Frank from the charter school office. He recommended 3 schools throughout New York State. Excuse me. And so these 3 schools, though, are larger in campus size. So my intention was to actually interview 10 leaders that were either CEOs or similar to myself as CAO/principal. Of course, right at the time when my interviews and I was supposed to go visit these schools throughout the state, COVID hit. So everything had to be switched to virtual. So I was able to interview virtually 7 of the 10 leaders. I was not able to connect with the other 3. But basically my questions, I wanted to find out about charter school leaders that have this standard of that they're showing academic excellence. How do they describe their leadership? What are the most frequently used practices and behaviors? And what practices do they identify as most important in leading a charter school? Which again is I've kind of summarized the purpose of this study, but what's important to note, this researcher, I should say, at the bottom of my screen here, Golick. She's a professor at the University of Florida, and she's produced 3 texts now about charter schools, some on leadership in charter schools, but all different topics as they relate to charters. And her quote really sums up the purpose of my study. It's important for the education community to learn about leadership in charter schools because they're rapidly growing. They are a reform effort for public education, and they need to know about the leadership because the leadership is what's central to the students performing and the student outcomes. Second to the teacher, which we know the teacher is the front and center, but the leadership behind the scenes is really paramount to this work. These were just the lit review main people who came up, and as I mentioned, Golick for charter schools, but also this researcher with the last name Bickmore is a professor at the University of Nevada, has also generated many articles. So my study was a case study method, which means I have a very small sample. I spent a lot of time, I read all of the state provided documents, like all of their annual reviews, their renewal applications, visited their websites, did the virtual interviews. The intent was to travel to their actual buildings, which would have been nice and added another piece. But it allowed me to gather their real world perspectives, and we still made the most out of the Zoom meetings. And so what were my findings? So my findings were, when you asked them, how do you describe your leadership? The key themes that came up were expectations, having very high expectations for your student, for your staff. Vision, having always a forward thinking where we're going and what we want to accomplish, what the future will look like, where we are now and where we want to be. Because of the time of the study happening during COVID, leadership in time of crisis definitely came up, and what you learned from that. That could be a whole different, actually a follow-up study to this. And then the word culture, that came up in every single interview and description. But when they talked about culture, it was a culture of open communication, heavy support, and shared decision making. So not just a top-down model of this is what we're doing and why and this is how we're doing it, but a very collaborative environment. And then I also, besides just doing interviews and speaking to 7 individual leaders, I also implemented a survey tool, and it was a tool I purchased, and it is from Kouzes and Posner's Research Corporation, and it's called the Leadership Practices Inventory, the LPI. And so then from that inventory, I sorted the data using Excel spreadsheets and formulas to basically sort through the highest frequency of certain behaviors. And these are the behaviors that are most frequently used by highly effective exemplary leaders. I set a personal example of what I expect of others. So that's leading by example. I paint the big picture of what we aspire to accomplish. That's going back to a vision, inspiring a shared vision. I ask, what can we learn when things do not go expected? This is challenging the process. This goes back to a lot of learning taking place during crisis times. I treat others with dignity and respect. That's enabling others to act and to help and to delegate authority and decision making. And I make sure that people are creatively recognized for their contribution and success of our projects. This on the LPI was one of the highest frequencies of a practice used. However, in the narrative portion of my research, recognizing others and what they call, Kouzes and Posner calls, encouraging from the heart, wasn't really mentioned. And that probably was because of the time, because everybody's focus was on shifting to closing the schools and shifting in COVID, but it's certainly something that I'm sure now leaders are making sure to recognize their staff and their families and their students for all the great things that are now happening. And there were similar themes to my sub question about leaders, charter school leaders, identifying what's most important in leading a charter school. So there wasn't like a real big aha moment here. It was a lot of the same things: communication, support, expectations. But what really tied that all together was the last comments about they're all important, whether you lead a charter school, a private school, or a traditional public school. However, when you're leading in a context of high accountability, these are paramount and must be present in order for the school to be successful. And I think that's where my one committee member disagreed with what he called my assumption, although it's not my assumption, those were my findings. And so basically these 5 practices of exemplary leadership, if used with high frequency, used regularly, will lead to higher student outcomes and to exemplary results. And so with that, what I would recommend, and I don't think this one particular member liked this as well, since he's the head of the leadership program I was presenting to, I think that they need to incorporate more coursework and curriculum that's based around charter schools, like a charter school 101. And I also think that when you're preparing to be a leader of a school, charter schools should be mentioned because they're expanding, they're growing. And if you have a new leader coming out of a new program, the chances are they may start their career as a leader at a charter school. And so they need to understand what that looks like and what those dynamics are. And that while, yes, we have a lot of the same stressors of a traditional public school, we have a lot of differences too. So anyways, I would recommend that leadership programs include curriculum and programs. I would recommend that the CSO, our authorizers, that they could provide support, professional training for school leaders that are based on transformational leadership programs, behaviors. And I have a lot of things listed here for future research that I won't go into, but one of the things I think would be really interesting is to go back now and visit schools and talk about how their leadership practices may have changed during a pandemic and what that looks like, because this is so new to everyone. I think it would be really interesting research to see like what your thoughts were pre-pandemic and now what your leadership philosophies may be post or current pandemic, I should say. So yeah, so that's my conclusion. Like I said, transformational leadership, the 5 practices of exemplary leadership should be replicated and should be used with high frequency. And that is, you know, these practices resonate with me. And from my own research, it has helped me to recognize what I need to do a little bit more of, and even, you know, focus on a little bit more. So sorry, that went over a little bit. I got to say a lot of things I didn't get to say in my committee presentation. So this is my round. So thanks. That's it. If there's any questions, I'll answer them for you.
I just want to say congratulations. And while you only presented that in a few short slides, it was a lot of work. And, you know, this is definitely groundbreaking. I remember back in when I was just doing my admin degree, I think that my research was always around charters as well. And I think I probably found a lot of the same studies because there's not a lot out there.
There's not. So I'm really interested in continuing, you know, staying. That's why you go for a PhD, because you want to do continued research as well. And I'm not going to give up the fight. I would really love to get my foot in the door, like just a charter 101 class at UB, Buff State, NU, somewhere, just to, you know, lay that foundation, whether it's for new coming teachers to have because we know from going to teacher recruitment day, we always ask the question to a new a candidate, why do you want to work at a charter school? And 8 times, or maybe 9 times, but at least 8 times out of 10, they don't even know what a charter school is. And so I would really like to continue that work. And
yeah,
to
out of
educate people.
any of them, UB would be the most open. When I first started, I took a class that charter was a part of. In the title, I can't remember what it was now because it was so long ago. But it's
my
funny
external
when that professor moved to Arizona, so did that class.
Oh, well, my external evaluator, Karen Marchioli, Karen was my external on this, as she's just finished her dissertation. She is now Dr. Marchioli. She is going to be teaching some courses at UB as well. So maybe she can be my entry point, or at least let me like present to a class or something to get my foot in the door. But that's my work in a nutshell. And I will be forever thankful to the Board of Trustees for supporting me and taking the time to do this. Thank you again. And that Jim concludes my CAO report. Oh, is Jim on mute?
It's on you, Jim. You're on mute, Jim. There you go.
Your microphone's not working. I can hand it over to Mary for the academic committee report. Step in as VP.
Okay, I will go ahead with the academic committee report. First of all, our congratulations to Dr. Novak. Quite the accomplishment, and a lot of work went into that, and we're very proud of you. Most of the report you've heard parts of, so I'll shorten it as much as I can. As you know, on November 30th, we went to all remote instruction, and Darcy gave you the reasons for that, so I won't go into that. Lessons are taking place live with synchronous instruction. Students who do not attend will be contacted in real time by the building sub assigned to each grade level. Asynchronous lessons will also be available to all students in case they cannot attend the synchronized class. And in order to be marked present for the day, students must complete at least one lesson and exit ticket prior to 4 p.m. Daily attendance closes at 4:15.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Oh, I figured it out. Sorry, Mary. I was playing with fun.
That's okay. So as Darcy said, the attendance seems to have improved tremendously. So I'm very happy about that. all of the Chromebooks have been deployed to each student. The hotspots will be distributed as soon as they come in. And the payment for that is a contract for $15 for unlimited use, data use. What else? Darcy started adding evidence to the goals that we will be evaluating her on. She will continue to do that. And then at the end of the school year, she will provide us with a portfolio. Our next meeting will be in the third quarter with a specific date and time to be announced. Maybe not virtually by then, who knows? But that's the way it is right now. So that concludes our report.
Thank you very much. And thank you for jumping in, Amy, while I was technically deficient. Okay, Ricky, your turn.
Nope. Governance first. Governance.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn. Oh my God. Lynn, are you there?
I don't think she is.
She's here. I see her.
No voice.
Can't hear you.
Lynn, your microphone, she had this problem the other day. Yeah, Lynn, check the sound on your actual computer, right? That was what was the problem the other day.
Okay.
Let's give Lynn a minute, and Ricky, why don't you jump in and see if Lynn
Okay.
can get her mic on.
All right, everyone. Since I have nothing else to do tonight, we're gonna walk through the financial report line by line. Just joking. In your report, you got your financial report, the balance sheet, and the profit and loss. And as I've explained in prior meetings, our balance sheet is just basically a representation of what the bank owns, what debt it has, and what's the difference between the two on the bottom line. If you're taking a look at the balance sheet, you can still see that if you look on page 1, we still have if you're looking at total bank accounts at first bold area, we still have a healthy deposit in the bank as far as funds. Looking down a little bit lower where we're talking about accounts receivable, and that's really monies that are due to us. You see we have a healthy balance there compared to a little to the right of where it was last year, and that's really a function of timing and just the receipt of the payments from the district. On that portion of the balance sheet, nothing else that I really want to bring particular note to. I do want to take you over to page 3 of the balance sheet. And just one thing I want to note, earlier in the year, we talked about the CARES Act and the PPP loan program that a lot of businesses were able to take advantage of. And the school, we took a PPP loan, and you'll see that down there, the lower part, that $530,000. So we took that, and if we met certain conditions, basically keeping a staff on and payroll, that amount of money would actually be forgiven. So we wouldn't have to repay it. Happy to advise that we have put in the application for full forgiveness of the debt, and Tim has done a good job of shepherding that, so that I would say probably if it's based on what's going on, you're going to see probably in February or March, the government's actually going to pay off the bank with that. They're running a little slow with that. The other item, if you go to the profit and loss, and that is really the statement that shows how well are we doing to date as far as the money that we bring in versus the expenses that go out. So if you take a look at page 1, down near the bottom, about 2/3 down or so, you see your total income, and that's the 1,518,000. That's a representation of thus far for this fiscal year, the monies that we've brought into the school. If you go down a little bit lower, it's really breaking out where the expenses are. And some of the things you want to look at is, kind of the large expenses there. And as typical, it's in our wages, teacher wages, things of that nature, what I like to call our personnel costs. That's typically been the bulk of what our expenditures are. The other items on that, as you go down through, I just want to point you to a couple items on page 3, down near the bottom. So we've got a couple items, the charter school CSI grant. And that was, the grant that, the monies that we received for for cooling units through New York State, which was a great one. And the other one you see on the expense side is I'm sorry, it's not money we received, it's an expense for adding the cooling units. The monies have, that is going to be covered through the New York State grant. And the other one, you see the ESSER funding, that is funding we received for additional Chromebooks and iPads, and those funds are yet to be reimbursed. But we did get granted the funds, which is a substantial achievement given the dollar amount there. And I guess so that really is where we're at. And you see, if you go to the last page, it's kind of you're getting to what's the bottom line look like. You got right now we're showing per this that we're showing a loss, but that is really just a timing issue that we've recognized some expenses and such things such as the grant and all. That's an expense now because the money went out the door and we haven't received the actual grant funds. So I think that looking at that, we're still in sound fiscal shape. Everything's moving along great. And the next report, we hope to have the budget versus actual as far as the school budget for the year. Any questions there?
Anyone have any questions?
No.
I guess we're good, Rick. Thank you
All right,
very much.
moving on. Thank you.
Question?
Got our
Oh.
somewhere. All right, Lynn, back to you.
Thank you. Lynn, did you get back on? I guess not. I can give the report. Lynn has been working over the last month or so through the governance committee to, as I previously mentioned in our session with SED, to get community involvement. Darcy has developed a virtual tour, which we intend to give as a public tour, inviting people to our website. And Darcy and I will be there the 17th. Darcy, we decided on the 17th for sure?
Yes, sorry, it took me a minute to come off mute. Yes, the 17th, I think at 3 p.m.
Okay, right. And we're going to be sending out letters to our community businesses and other officials to invite them to this tour. And at that time, I will invite them to become involved with our board, whether as just to participate in a committee sense or to apply for a trusteeship. So that's on target for the 17th. And I believe that's all we have for the governance committee right now. There is any questions or comments on that? If you know anybody that'd like to participate, we can send the link. So,
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you can send it to the board when you send it out and forget us.
absolutely. Okay, and if any board members knows anybody else we should put on the list, please let us know and we'll be happy to. Or any of our community members who are still with us. I can't see the participation list right now, but I must have. Can we see who's on? Can you switch that over, Jill? Who's on the,
Sure. I think, Jim, it looks like there may be one parent still on.
oh, okay.
It looks like
I lost
teachers.
that panel. Did I do something?
No,
All right,
Did I do
anyway,
it looks like teachers, trustees, and possibly one parent. Do you see the same, Jill? Or can you not see? Yeah, sure.
I think probably we should send that letter to the school in general, in case they have anybody else that wants to participate, they can forward it.
Mhm.
Okay, any questions about that? Or any other governance matters? Good. And there's no unfinished business, there is no new business, there is no need for an executive session. So I just have one matter, and that's a motion to adjourn.
No
Aye.
motion. Give it to Amy.
Okay, Amy got it, Ricky second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much for a very efficient session and also for the grueling SED. Thank
That
you.
one wasn't bad though, Jim.
Take care.
Congratulations,
everyone.
Dr.
Thanks.
Novak.
Good
Congratulations.
job, Darcy.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
You, Dr. Novak.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Merry Christmas.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. See you next
Merry
year.
Christmas.
Right.